Snow drifted across the empty plains like pale smoke, muting every sound that might have broken the stillness of Christmas Eve. The nearest town was 10 miles away, and the only light in that wide darkness came from a small ranch house crouched beneath a sloping hill. Inside, Eli Turner sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the weak flicker of the oil lamp. The radio on the counter hummed an old carol, the kind that once filled his home with laughter. Now it only echoed against the walls. Eli had been a cowboy all his life, steady hands, quiet heart, loyal to land and work. But the ranch had grown quieter since Lydia, his wife, left 2 winters ago. He didn't speak her name anymore, though sometimes he still set 2 plates at supper before realizing the habit. The divorce papers had mentioned irreconcilable differences, but what really split them was the discovery of another man's jacket left hanging by the porch. Eli had burned it without a word, then stopped going into town unless he had to. People there looked at him with the soft pity reserved for the betrayed. That night, he'd almost decided not to drive into town at all. The pantry was running low, and the cattle feed needed replenishing, but the thought of holiday chatter made him uneasy. Still, as snow thickened, he buttoned his coat, pulled on his gloves, and climbed into the truck. The engine coughed before settling into a slow rumble, its sound vanishing into the white quiet. He drove without hurry, headlights slicing through curtains of snow. Town was half asleep when he arrived. Most shops were closed, only the small diner on Main Street still glowed faintly, its windows fogged by heat and conversation. Eli parked by the curb and stepped out, boots crunching ice. He kept his hat low, avoiding the few faces still about. Inside the general store, he picked up bread, coffee, and feed, nodding to the clerk but saying little. The man wished him Merry Christmas, and Eli managed a half-smile before stepping back into the cold that he might have gone straight home, but something stopped him. A movement near the back of the diner, too quick for the wind, too human for a stray dog. Eli squinted through the dimness. Behind the building, someone was crouched by the garbage bins, moving with a frantic urgency. At first, Eli thought it was a thief. He turned off his engine and walked closer, boots scraping the frozen ground. "Hey," he called, voice rough from disuse. The figure froze, then tried to back away. In the faint light spilling from the diner's rear window, Eli saw a boy, no older than 18, thin as a shadow, wearing a torn jacket far too light for the weather. His hands trembled as he hid something behind him. The boy's face, pale under the street lamp, showed fear rather than guilt. Eli stopped a few feet away. "You stealing from them bins, kid?" The boy shook his head. "No, sir. Just hungry." His voice cracked like ice. Eli looked closer. There was no defiance in his eyes, only exhaustion. Snowflakes clung to his lashes. The boy glanced down at a half-eaten biscuit clutched in his hand, as if ashamed of needing it. Eli sighed. "Ain't much left in there worth eatin'. Come on. You'll freeze before you fill your stomach." The boy hesitated, taking a step back. "I'm fine." "You're not," Eli said quietly. "Come on now. Got a fire going back at the ranch. You can eat proper there." The boy's gaze darted toward the diner, then to Eli's truck. "You don't even know me." "That's true," Eli replied. "But I know hunger when I see it. And I got more stew than I can eat alone." For a moment, the boy said nothing. Then, as another gust of snow swept between them, he nodded. Eli turned and walked toward the truck, not looking back to see if he'd follow. He heard the crunch of cautious steps behind him. When they climbed in, Eli turned the heater up full. The boy huddled near it, silent, staring at his hands. "What's your name, son?" Eli asked as the truck pulled onto the road. "Noah," the boy murmured. "Noah Reed. Where you from, Noah?" He hesitated. "Nowhere lately." Eli didn't press. He recognized the tone, a mix of pride and pain too raw to touch. The road stretched empty ahead, snow whispering against the windshield. For a while, the only sound was the hum of tires on packed ice and the low sigh of the heater. Then Noah spoke again, barely above a whisper, "I can work. If you don't want charity." Eli glanced at him. "Ain't charity to feed someone who's cold. We'll talk about work later." Noah looked out the window, eyes reflecting the distant glow of stars hidden behind clouds. "I didn't think anyone would stop. Most people don't even see me." Eli didn't answer. He remembered too well what it felt like to be invisible. By the time they reached the ranch, the snow had thickened into steady sheets. The porch light glowed weakly through it. Inside, warmth wrapped around them like a forgotten memory. Eli hung his coat, motioned Noah to sit near the fire. The boy obeyed, holding his hands out to the flames. His fingers were thin, raw with cold. "You wait there," Eli said. "I'll fix something hot." He moved through the kitchen quietly, pouring stew into a pot, slicing what remained of yesterday's bread. When he carried the tray back, Noah's eyes widened as if he couldn't believe it was meant for him. He ate slowly at first, then faster, murmuring a soft thank you that barely reached his lips. Eli sat across from him, watching without judgment. He'd seen hunger before, during droughts, after storms, but this was different. This was the hunger of someone starved for safety. When the bowl was empty, Noah looked embarrassed. "I'll clean this," he said, standing quickly. Eli shook his head. "Leave it. You look ready to drop." Noah hesitated, glancing around the cabin, the worn furniture, the framed photo turned face down on the mantel, the quiet order of a place too tidy for comfort. "You live here alone?" "Yeah," Eli said simply. "Must get lonely." "Sometimes," he admitted. Then, after a pause, "Sometimes quiet's easier than talk." Noah nodded, pulling the blanket tighter around himself. The fire crackled between them, filling the silence. Outside, the wind howled softly against the shutters. After a while, Eli rose and opened the door to the spare room. "You can sleep in there. It ain't much, but it's warm." Noah stood, uncertain. "You sure?" Eli gave a half smile. "Ain't every day a stranger drops in on Christmas Eve. Guess we both could use the company." Noah's eyes softened. "Thank you, Mr. Turner." "Eli's fine," he said. "Get some rest, Noah. We'll see what tomorrow brings." As Noah disappeared into the small room, Eli lingered by the fire. The house no longer felt quite so hollow. He watched the flames dance and thought of how strange it was, a chance meeting behind a diner, a boy searching for food, and a man who hadn't believed in second chances for years. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of church bells from town, distant and small against the night. Eli turned down the lamp and whispered to no one in particular, "Merry Christmas." He didn't expect an answer. Yet somehow, for the first time in a long while, the silence felt like it was listening. Morning came quietly, wrapped in white. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside Eli's window blank and still, as though the land itself was holding its breath. Inside, the fire had burned low. Eli stirred the embers with a poker, the orange glow reflecting in his tired eyes. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed them, he saw the boy's face, too thin, too young to be out there alone. From down the short hall came the faint sound of movement. Noah stepped out, blanket draped over his shoulders, hair tousled, cheeks pink from the lingering chill. For a moment he looked startled to find himself in warmth, as though waking from a dream that might vanish if he breathed too hard. "Morning," Eli said, voice low but steady. Noah nodded, hesitant. "Didn't mean to sleep so late." "Son wasn't in any hurry either," Eli replied, gesturing toward the window. "Coffee's on the stove." Noah poured himself a cup with both hands, careful not to spill. He took a sip and winced at the bitterness. Eli almost smiled. "Needs a little sugar. Been that way since I started making it." A faint grin flickered on Noah's lips, gone as quickly as it came. "It's good," he said, though his eyes stayed on the mug. Eli studied him quietly, the way his shoulders hunched inward, the guardedness in every movement. He looked like someone used to apologizing for taking up space. "You got somewhere you need to be?" Eli asked after a while. Noah shook his head. Not really. Been moving around for a while now. Run away? Something like that. He set the mug down, fingers tightening on its rim. I left home a few months ago. Things got bad. Eli waited, giving him room to speak or stay silent. The boy took a breath. My dad found out I liked guys. Didn't take it well. Said I was ruining the family name. My mom, she didn't say much of anything. He swallowed, gaze fixed on the floorboards. So I packed a bag and left. The words hung heavy between them. Eli felt a flicker of anger, at the cruelty of parents who'd turn a child into a stranger, but he didn't let it show. You been on your own since then? Yeah. Slept behind gas stations mostly. Worked at a farm for a week, till they found out too. His tone was quiet, but steady. Guess people like me don't fit in small towns. Eli's jaw tightened. World's full of people who ain't learned decency yet. Noah looked up, surprised by the warmth in his voice. You don't mind? Mind? Eli shook his head. You're a person, Noah. That's enough for me. For the first time, the boy's shoulders eased. He stared at the fire, eyes glistening. Thanks. It's been a while since anyone said that. They sat in silence for a time, the crackle of the hearth filling the space between words. Outside, the snow began to melt off the fence posts, glittering under weak sunlight. Eli rose and reached for his coat. I've got chores to do. Cat'll be restless after last night. You can stay here, warm up. Noah stood quickly. Let me help. Please. I said I could work for what you gave me. Eli studied him, saw the sincerity there, and finally nodded. All right. Grab that spare jacket by the door. Boots might be big, but they'll do. They stepped out into the sharp cold. The air smelled clean, the kind of air that cleared thoughts and left room for new ones. Together they walked toward the stables. Eli showed him how to haul hay, how to scatter feed, how to check the troughs for ice. Noah listened carefully, eager, trying to do everything right. You pick things up fast, Eli said, tightening a latch. I worked with horses back home sometimes, Noah replied. They're easier to talk to than people. Eli chuckled. Ain't that the truth? When they returned to the house, snow clung to their boots, and a trace of color had returned to Noah's cheeks. Eli cooked a simple lunch, eggs and biscuits, and they ate quietly at the table. This time, the silence felt companionable. Afterward, Noah looked around the small cabin, at the neat shelves, the worn furniture, and the few pictures still hanging. His gaze lingered on one frame face down on the mantel. Was that your family? Eli hesitated before answering. Used to be. My wife's name was Lydia. Noah glanced at him, waiting. Eli leaned back in his chair. She left. 2 years ago. For a friend of mine, if you can believe that. I'm sorry, Noah said softly. Don't be, Eli murmured. Sometimes people show you who they are. Took me too long to listen. He stared into the fire, voice low. I thought love meant staying even when it hurt. Turns out, it just meant not knowing when to let go. Noah's expression shifted, sympathy mixed with something deeper. Guess we both learned that the hard way. Eli looked at him then, really looked. The boy wasn't fragile, he was surviving. Beneath the worn clothes and tired eyes, there was strength, quiet and stubborn. As evening fell, the wind rose again, sweeping across the plain in long sighs. Eli lit another fire while Noah mended an old blanket with a needle he'd found in the drawer. The simple rhythm of the task filled the cabin with an odd sense of peace. After a while, Noah said, You ever think about leaving this place? Starting over somewhere new? Eli shook his head. This land's all I know. My folks are buried out back. Hard to walk away from roots like that. Must get lonely, though. It does. Eli's tone was quiet, reflective. But loneliness is easier to live with than disappointment. Noah stopped stitching, his brow furrowed. You really think everyone ends up disappointed? Not everyone, Eli said. Just the ones who forget how to trust. The fire popped softly. Noah looked at him across the flickering light. Maybe trusting again is the only way not to be. The word struck deeper than the boy probably intended. Eli didn't respond, but something shifted in him, a faint loosening of the wall he'd built. Later that night, as the cabin settled into silence, Noah sat by the window watching the snow fall anew. Eli joined him, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. Figured we could both use something sweet, he said. Noah smiled faintly. Thank you, Eli. They sat together, listening to the soft hum of wind through the trees. Outside, the sky was a deep blue-black, scattered with stars. I used to think Christmas was supposed to feel like home, Noah said after a while. Guess I forgot what that feels like. Eli's voice was gentle. Sometimes home finds you when you ain't looking for it. Noah turned toward him, eyes reflecting the firelight. You really think so? I do. A long pause stretched between them, comfortable, then fragile. Eli felt something stir he hadn't felt in years, not desire, but connection, the slow recognition of another soul carrying the same kind of ache. It scared him a little, and comforted him all the same. When Noah finally stood to head for his room, he hesitated at the doorway. Good night, Eli. Night, son, Eli said, though the word felt both right and wrong, too small for what he felt, too big for what he didn't yet understand. When the door closed, Eli remained by the fire. He reached for the old photograph on the mantel and turned it face up. Lydia's smile stared back at him, distant and unreal. After a long moment, he set it aside that he looked toward the closed door of the spare room and whispered to the empty air, maybe it's time to stop living like a ghost. Outside, snow fell again, soft, endless, and forgiving, covering every scar of the land as if granting it another chance. Morning sunlight spilled through tall windows, painting the room in quiet gold. Eli blinked awake, momentarily disoriented by the warmth of the blanket and the scent of brewed coffee floating through the air. For a fleeting moment, he thought he was home again, before the memory returned like a slow bruise. He sat up, his reflection caught in the mirror across the room, a stranger in borrowed comfort. Outside the door, the low murmur of a man's voice drifted from the kitchen. Daniel Cross moved with the ease of someone used to control, every gesture deliberate, precise. He glanced up as Eli stepped hesitantly into view. Morning, Daniel said, setting down his tablet. I wasn't sure how you take your coffee, so I guessed. Hope black isn't too cruel a choice. Eli managed a small smile. Black's fine. Thank you. He wrapped his hands around the cup, grateful for the warmth, but unsure what to do with the silence that followed. The apartment was sleek but not cold, modern lines softened by books, sketches, and a faint scent of cedarwood. It felt lived in, though meticulously so. Daniel leaned against the counter, studying him without judgment. You slept nearly 10 hours, he said lightly. That's a good sign. I didn't mean to, Eli murmured. I should probably go. You've already done enough. Daniel shook his head. You don't owe me an apology. If you want to leave, I'll drive you. But if you need a few days to get your bearings, you can stay here. There's work I could use help with, sorting digital files, that sort of thing. You'd earn something, not charity. The word work steadied Eli more than he expected. I could do that, he said quietly. At least until I figure things out. Good, Daniel replied with a faint smile. Then let's start with breakfast. Real breakfast. You look like you haven't had one in weeks. The meal was simple, eggs, toast, and conversation that wandered cautiously between small talk and silence. Eli learned that Daniel ran a private investment firm, that he built it young and kept mostly to himself. He spoke in a calm, unhurried way that drew trust without asking for it. Over the next few days, Eli settled into a rhythm. He worked from the home office, organizing client files, drafting notes, sometimes just listening to music through Daniel's old speakers. Daniel moved through the house like quiet weather, always composed, rarely still. Yet beneath the composure, Eli sensed a loneliness that mirrored his own. On the fifth evening, the front door opened with the sharp sound of keys, and the air changed. A man entered, tall, polished, his expression coolly assessing. His gaze found Eli first, lingering just long enough to register irritation. "Who's this?" he asked, setting his briefcase down. Daniel looked up from the couch. "Aaron, this is Eli. He's helping me with some projects this week." Aaron's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I see. You've hired an assistant without telling me." "It's temporary," Daniel said evenly. "Eli needed a place to stay. It costs me nothing to help." Eli stood awkwardly, unsure whether to shake hands or disappear. Aaron gave a small nod, polite, dismissive, then turned to Daniel. "We'll talk later." He left the room, and the quiet that followed was heavier than before. Daniel exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. "Don't mind him," he said softly. "He's protective." "Your partner?" Eli asked before he could stop himself. Daniel nodded. "We've been together a few years. It's complicated." Eli said nothing more, but the word complicated stayed with him. The days passed differently after that. Aaron was gone most mornings, but when he was home, tension filled the air like static. Eli often caught fragments of arguments, whispered words through closed doors, the sharp edges of frustration. He pretended not to hear. One afternoon, Daniel joined him in the study, both working in silence until Daniel's voice broke through. "You remind me of myself at your age," he said quietly. "Trying to seem braver than you feel." Eli looked up, startled by the gentleness in his tone. "You don't seem afraid of much." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's because I've learned how to hide it." They spoke for hours after that, about fear, family, the strange loneliness that came from not fitting into the shapes others expected. Eli found himself drawn to Daniel's stillness, the way his voice could turn warmth into safety. There was nothing romantic in their words, but the air between them carried an undercurrent neither of them acknowledged. By the end of the week, Aaron's patience had thinned. He came home early one evening to find Daniel and Eli laughing over old records. The sound froze him in the doorway. "So this is what you do when I'm gone," he said sharply. Daniel rose, calm but weary. "Don't start." "I'm not starting," Aaron shot back. "I'm asking why there's a teenager living in our guest room and sharing dinner with you every night." "I'm 18, Eli said softly, though his voice trembled. Aaron turned his glare on him. "I wasn't asking you." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Enough. Eli stays until he finds his footing. That's all." Aaron laughed, bitterly. "You're playing savior again, Daniel. You always need someone to fix, because fixing people keeps you from fixing yourself." The words landed hard. Eli wanted to disappear. Instead, Daniel said quietly, "You're tired, Aaron. Maybe we both are." Aaron didn't reply. He left the room, the slam of the door echoing through the apartment. Eli sat frozen. "I should go," he whispered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Daniel's expression softened. "You didn't. Aaron and I have been unraveling for a long time. You just happened to arrive at the end of it." He looked away then, staring at the city lights beyond the window. "When two people stop hearing each other," he said, "silence becomes the only language left." Eli didn't know what to say. He wanted to comfort him, to thank him, to stay silent all at once. But words felt too fragile for the space between them. The night wore on. Daniel retreated to his room. Eli returned to the guest bed that no longer felt quite safe. Through the wall, he could hear faint voices, an argument breaking into quiet sobs, then nothing. Sometime after midnight, footsteps approached his door. Daniel's voice came softly through the wood. "Eli. Are you awake?" "Yes. I just wanted you to know," I meant what I said. You have nothing to feel guilty for. Some things were ending long before you arrived. Eli hesitated, then replied, thank you. For everything. He heard Daniel exhale, a sound halfway between relief and exhaustion. Then footsteps receded, and the apartment returned to silence. Eli lay staring into the darkness, his chest tight with emotions he couldn't name. Gratitude, confusion, maybe something more dangerous. He knew he should leave soon, that staying would tangle him in someone else's heartbreak, but the thought of walking away felt unbearable. He turned toward the window, watching the reflection of city lights shimmer across the glass. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed softly. The sound was small but final, like the end of something just beginning. Sleep eluded him. The warmth of Daniel's kindness lingered, tangled with guilt and longing. In the stillness, Eli realized that kindness could be as intoxicating as love, and just as dangerous.